What if the daughter everyone called stupid was the only one who could change the fate of an entire valley? He believed she was a burden too slow, too different, too weak to survive. So one bitter winter morning, he left her at the gate of a poor rancher and rode away without looking back. But what happened next didn't just prove him wrong. It exposed a truth buried deeper than the land itself, and turned his decision into the greatest mistake of his life. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. Stay with me, because this is where her story truly begins. Lena Crow had never been able to keep up. On the training grounds, where the young hunters of the tribe gathered beneath the wide Wyoming sky, everything seemed to move faster than she could follow. Arrows flew clean and straight from steady hands, thudding into distant targets with satisfying precision. Horses responded to the slightest shift of weight, galloping in perfect arcs across the frozen earth. Laughter rose easily among the others, sharp, confident, unafraid. And then there was Lena. She stood at the edge of the line, her fingers stiff around the bowstring. She pulled released, and her arrow dipped low, striking the dirt several feet short. A few boys nearby snorted. One didn't even bother hiding his grin. "Too slow," someone muttered. "Try aiming before you shoot," another added. Lena swallowed and tried again. This time the arrow flew crooked, veering off to the side. More laughter. It spread quickly like fire catching dry grass. When it came time to ride, it was worse. The horse beneath her shifted restlessly, ignoring her hesitant commands. While others guided their mounts with confidence, Lena struggled just to stay balanced. The animal jerked forward unexpectedly, forcing her to clutch the reins too tightly, pulling them both out of rhythm. A nearby rider passed her easily, glancing back with a smirk. "Useless," he said under his breath. The word stuck. At first, it had been whispers, quiet jokes shared between friends. But over time, the whispers grew louder, bolder. People stopped lowering their voices. They said it openly now, as if it were simply a fact. "She's slow. She doesn't belong here. She'll never survive." Lena heard every word. She never argued, never shouted back. Instead, she kept trying again and again, each failure pressing heavier than the last. Her shoulders began to fold inward. Her gaze dropped more often to the ground. The space she occupied seemed to shrink, as if she were trying to disappear without anyone noticing. And through it all, Thomas Crow watched. He stood apart from the others, his posture rigid, his expression carved from something harder than stone. As the leader of the tribe, his presence carried weight. His silence carried even more. He did not defend her. He did not agree with them. He simply watched. That somehow hurt more than anything the others said. It was Grandmother Elowen who saw something different. She often sat at the edge of the camp, wrapped in layers of worn cloth, her eyes distant yet sharp. While others focused on strength, on speed, on skill, Elowen watched for things that couldn't be measured so easily. One afternoon after another, failed attempt at archery, Lena lingered behind the others, her arrow still lying useless in the dirt. She didn't notice Elowen at first. "You're listening to something," the old woman said quietly. Lena startled and turned. "I don't hear anything." Elowen smiled faintly. "Not with your ears." She gestured for Lena to come closer. "You watch the ground more than the target," Elowen continued. "You look at the trees when the others look at each other. You notice what moves before it moves." Lena frowned, unsure whether it was meant as criticism or praise. "The others think you are slow," Elowen said. "They are wrong. You are simply looking at the wrong things, or perhaps the right ones." From that day on, Elowen began teaching her not how to fight, not how to hunt, but how to listen. She showed Lena how the wind shifted before a storm, not in the sky, but in the way leaves trembled at their edges. She pointed out how animals grew restless minutes, sometimes hours before danger arrived. She had Lena kneel and press her palm against the earth, feeling for faint vibrations that most would never notice. Everything speaks, Elowen told her, but not everyone knows how to listen. For the first time, Lena felt something shift inside her. Not confidence, not yet, but something close. A quiet sense that maybe she wasn't broken, just different. They spent hours together in silence, watching, learning, breathing with the land instead of against it. Those moments became Lena's refuge, the only place where she didn't feel like a mistake. But winter does not wait for anyone. The cold came early that year, harsher than before. The wind cut deeper, and the nights stretched longer. It was during one of those long nights that Elowen fell ill. At first, it seemed minor, a weakness, a cough. But within days it worsened. Her breathing grew shallow. Her strength faded quickly, as if the winter itself had decided to claim her. Lena stayed by her side as much as she could. "There is still so much I don't know," Lena whispered one evening, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay steady. Elowen's eyes, dim but focused, met hers. "You know enough," she said softly. "You just don't trust it yet." Lena shook her head. "I'm not like the others." "No," Elowen agreed. "You are not." Pause. Good. The word hung in the air, fragile but certain. "Listen to what the land tells you," Elowen continued. "Not what they tell you. Not even what you tell yourself." Her hand tightened weakly around Lena's for a brief moment. "Promise me." "I promise," Lena whispered. By morning, Elowen was gone. The silence she left behind was louder than any laughter Lena had ever endured. Without her, there was no one left to stand between Lena and the judgment of the tribe. The whispers returned sharper now, more certain. Without Elowen's quiet presence, Lena felt exposed like a tree stripped of its bark. Not long after the council gathered, the fire at the center of the camp burned low as the warriors spoke in hushed but urgent tones. They talked of survival, of strength, of the challenges ahead. And eventually, inevitably, they spoke of Lena. "She slows us down. She brings uncertainty. We cannot carry weakness into a hard winter." Thomas Crow listened. At first he said nothing, but silence over time becomes agreement. When the council ended, his decision had already been made. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, he saddled 2 horses. "Ride with me," he told Lena. She didn't ask where they were going. Something in his tone told her that the answer wouldn't matter. They rode for hours. The forest stretched endlessly around them, snow crunching beneath the horses' hooves. The wind moved through the trees with a low, restless sound. Neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything neither of them said. As the sun began to fall, they reached a valley. At its center stood a ranch, weathered, worn, barely holding together. The fences leaned at uneven angles. The barn roof sagged under the weight of old snow. It didn't look like a place of safety. It looked like something that had been forgotten. They stopped near the gate. Lena finally turned to him. "Why are we here?" Thomas didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm. Too calm. "You won't survive with us," he said. The words landed harder than any insult she had ever heard. And here she asked quietly. He looked at the ranch and then back at her. "Out here, the land will decide what you're worth." It wasn't encouragement. It wasn't even hope. It was a dismissal. Lena felt something inside her tighten, then go still. "Am I supposed to come back?" she asked. Thomas didn't respond. He turned his horse and rode away. He didn't look back. The sound of hooves faded into the distance until it disappeared completely, leaving behind nothing but wind and silence. Lena stood alone at the gate. She didn't cry. She simply watched the direction he had gone until there was nothing left to see. Then she turned. The ranch stretched out before her, quiet and lifeless. The fence creaked in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, something metallic knocked softly against wood. It didn't feel like a place anyone would choose, but it was the only place she had. She stepped forward. The ground beneath her boots was uneven, frozen hard. The closer she got, the more she noticed the details: the broken slats in the fence, the empty trough, the absence of movement. No voices, no animals, no signs of life. Until, "What are you doing here?" The voice came from the shadow of the barn. Lena froze. A man stepped into the fading light. Tall, unshaven, his clothes worn thin from years of use. His eyes were sharp but tired, like someone who had stopped expecting anything good to happen. Ethan Hale. He looked at her, then at the road behind her. "You lost?" he asked. Lena said nothing. His gaze followed the path Thomas had taken, then returned to her. Realization settled slowly. "Or did someone leave you here on purpose?" Still, she didn't answer. Ethan let out a quiet breath, more annoyed than surprised. "Great," he muttered. "Just what I needed." He walked closer, studying her for a moment longer. "You can't stay out here," he said. "You'll freeze before morning." He hesitated, then jerked his head toward the cabin. One night, he added, "That's it." It wasn't kindness. It was practicality. Inside the cabin was as empty as the ranch. A small table, a few chairs, a bed pushed into the corner. Everything carried the same sense of absence, as if something or someone had been there once, and then simply stopped. Lena noticed a child's cup on a shelf, a folded blanket that looked too small for an adult. She didn't ask. Ethan didn't explain. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply there. Later, as the light faded completely, Lena stepped outside. The air had changed. The sky looked clear, but something in the wind felt wrong. It moved differently, uneven, restless. The trees weren't swaying as they should. The ground felt tight. "A storm is coming," she said quietly. Ethan, standing near the barn, glanced up. The sky was empty. Still. "No, it's not," he said. "It's clear as it gets." Lena didn't argue. She simply watched the horizon. An hour later, the wind shifted. Hard. The temperature dropped sharply, and the first snow fell not gently, but in thick, fast-moving sheets. Within minutes, the valley was swallowed by white. Ethan cursed under his breath, rushing to secure the barn doors. The storm hit with full force. Snow slammed against the cabin walls. The wind howled through every crack. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Inside, Ethan worked quickly, reinforcing what he could. Then he paused and looked at Lena. Not the way he had before. Not as a problem. Not as someone left behind. But as something he didn't understand yet. Something he couldn't ignore. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something had already begun to change. Was Lena really as stupid as everyone said? Or was she simply seeing what no one else could? Tell me what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe before we step into the most intense part of the story. The storm passed, but something had changed. Not just in the sky, not just in the frozen valley wrapped in white silence, but in the way Ethan Hale looked at Lena Crow. The morning after, the world felt brittle. The water barrels were solid blocks of ice, the ground locked tight beneath a thin crust of snow. Ethan stood beside the frozen trough, muttering under his breath as he struck it with the back of an axe. "Useless," he growled. "All of it." Lena stood a few steps away, watching not the trough, not Ethan, but the land. The trees, the stillness between them. "There's water," she said quietly. Ethan didn't look up. "Yeah. It's called ice. Not there," she said. "Under." That made him pause. He turned, squinting at her. Under what? Lena stepped forward, scanning the ground. She walked slowly, then stopped near a patch where the snow lay thinner, where the earth beneath seemed slightly uneven. "Here." Ethan stared at the spot, then back at her. "You just guessing?" Lena didn't answer. Something in her stillness made him hesitate. Then, with a frustrated sigh, he drove the shovel into the ground. The first few inches were hard frozen, then suddenly softer. Ethan stopped. He dug faster. Within minutes, damp soil gave way to a shallow trickle of water slowly seeping upward. Ethan leaned back, breathing hard, staring at it. "You've got to be kidding me." Lena crouched beside the small stream, touching the water lightly. "It was moving before the freeze," she said. "It didn't stop." Ethan didn't reply, but the way he looked at her wasn't the same anymore. That wasn't the only thing. A few days later, one of the horses slipped near the icy ridge beyond the corral. The animal went down hard, its front leg twisted awkwardly beneath its body. It struggled, panicked, trying to rise. Ethan cursed and moved toward it. "Easy, easy," but Lena stepped in first. "Wait." Ethan stopped, surprised by the firmness in her voice. Lena approached slowly, her movements calm, measured. She didn't grab the reins. She didn't shout. She simply crouched beside the horse, her hand resting lightly against its neck. "It's scared," Ethan muttered. "I know." She examined the leg carefully, pressing just enough to feel the damage. The horse flinched, but didn't thrash. "It's not broken," Lena said. "Just strained." Ethan frowned. "You sure about that?" She didn't answer him. Instead, she moved quickly, gathering strips of cloth, small branches, and a bundle of dried herbs she had been carrying. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Helping it walk again." Ethan crossed his arms, skeptical, but he didn't stop her. Lena worked quietly, binding the leg with steady hands. The herbs crushed between her fingers released a faint scent into the cold air. "Where'd you learn that?" Ethan asked. Lena tied the last knot. "From someone who listened more than she spoke." Ethan said nothing after that. 3 days later, the horse stood. Not perfectly, not strong, but standing. Ethan watched it take its first careful steps and glanced at Lena. "All right," he said slowly. "I'm done pretending I understand this." Lena gave the smallest hint of a smile. And still, she kept noticing things. The wind would shift direction long before clouds gathered. Birds would take flight all at once, even when nothing visible disturbed them. The herd would drift closer to shelter hours before the temperature dropped. At first, Ethan ignored it. Then he started asking, "What do you see? Why now? Is it going to get worse?" And Lena would answer always, simply always, without hesitation. The space between them changed. Not warmth, not exactly, but something close to trust. Walter Briggs saw it before Ethan admitted it. The old cowboy leaned against the fence one afternoon, watching Lena from a distance as she stood near the edge of the pasture, her hand resting against the ground. "What's she doing?" he asked. Ethan followed his gaze, listening apparently. Walter chuckled softly. "Ain't listening with her ears." A moment later, the horses lifted their heads. Not all at once, but enough. Then they began to move. Slow at first, then faster, shifting as a group toward the lower ground. Ethan frowned. but a low rumble rolled across the valley seconds later. Not loud, not obvious. But there. Walter nodded once. Told you. Ethan looked at Lena again. Walter pushed off the fence. That girl ain't weak, he said. She just plays a different game. And from that day on, Ethan stopped treating her like someone who didn't belong. Victor Cain arrived when the snow began to thin. He rode into Hale Ranch like he owned the ground beneath his horse. His coat was clean, his boots polished, his posture relaxed in a way that only came from money and power. Ethan didn't like him the moment he stepped off the saddle. Mr. Hale, Victor said smoothly, glancing around the ranch. You've got yourself a unique property here. Ethan crossed his arms. What do you want? Victor smiled faintly. Business. He pulled out a folded document. I'm offering to buy this land. Ethan didn't even look at it. Not for sale. Victor's smile didn't fade, but his eyes sharpened. Everything's for sale, he said. Eventually. Not this, Ethan replied. Victor's gaze drifted past him and stopped. On Lena. Something shifted in his expression, quick, subtle, but unmistakable. He stepped closer, studying her. Didn't expect to see someone like you here, he said. Lena didn't respond. Victor tilted his head slightly. Interesting. Ethan stepped between them. You got your answer. Now leave. Victor folded the paper slowly. I'll be back, he said, when you're ready to be reasonable. As he rode away, his eyes lingered on Lena just a second too long. That was when the trouble started. It began quietly, a few cattle missing. Then a section of fence found cut clean through, no splintering, no tearing, just a precise break. Not wolves, Walter muttered. No, Ethan agreed. Not wolves. The next night, more were gone. Then the barn door was forced open. Tools scattered, tracks leading nowhere. And somehow, every time something went wrong, Victor's voice seemed to echo in the background. Strange things happening since that girl showed up. The rumor spread quickly in Copper Ridge. By the time Lena stepped into town, people were already watching her differently. They didn't say anything at first. They didn't need to. Ethan noticed. They don't know anything, he said. Lena didn't answer. She was already looking at the ground. The tracks didn't match the story. They were too clean, too deliberate. Someone was moving carefully, watching from a distance. They're not guessing, she said quietly. Ethan frowned. What do you mean, they know where to go? That was when she started following. The trail led across frozen ground, through patches of brush, over ridges, where the wind tried to erase every mark. But Lena didn't lose it. She saw what others missed, slight shifts in dirt, broken stems, the absence of snow where there should have been some. And eventually she found it. A hidden clearing. The missing cattle were there. Alive. Guarded. Lena memorized everything, the path, the landmarks, the way the ground sloped. When she returned, Ethan didn't hesitate. We're getting the sheriff. But when they came back with Sheriff Cole Bennett riding beside them, the clearing was empty. No cattle, no tracks, nothing. Ethan stared at the ground in disbelief. That's not possible. Lena knelt, touching the disturbed soil. They knew we were coming. Sheriff Cole shook his head. Without proof, I've got nothing. Ethan clenched his fists, and then Victor appeared. Well, now, he said, feigning surprise. Seems like you've got quite the imagination, Mr. Hale. Ethan turned sharply. You, Victor, raised a hand. Careful. Accusations need evidence. His gaze slid to Lena. Or maybe the problem isn't out there, he said softly. Maybe it's closer than you think. That night, Lena didn't sleep. She felt it now, the watching, the waiting. And she wasn't wrong. Noah Black Elk came under darkness. He stepped from the trees like a shadow given form, his voice low and urgent. "You need to listen carefully," he said. Lena nodded. "Victor Cain has been on our land before," Noah continued. "He wasn't looking for cattle. He was looking for something buried." "Buried," Lena repeated. Noah's eyes darkened. "Something valuable." "And now he's here," Lena said. "Yes," Noah replied. "And now he knows about you." Lena stilled. "You're being watched," he said. "Every move, every step, a pause. This is bigger than a ranch." Lena looked toward the valley. "I know," she said. The attack came 2 nights later. The first sign was the smell. Smoke, then the crack of fire. The barn was already burning when Lena reached the door. Flames climbed the wood, devouring it faster than the cold air could slow it down. "Horses," Ethan shouted, running straight toward it. Gunshots followed, sharp, close. Figures moved in the shadows beyond the firelight. "Get 'em out," Walter yelled. Lena didn't hesitate. She ran into the heat. Inside, the horses panicked, slamming against their stalls. Smoke thickened the air. "Easy," she whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. She moved quickly, unfastening ropes, guiding them toward the exit. Not pushing, leading. Then a shot. Ethan staggered, fell. Lena reached him in seconds, dragging him away from the collapsing beams. "Stay with me," she said. His eyes flickered. "Don't." "Let them, I won't." She went back, through fire, through smoke, and one by one the horses followed her out. Outside, the attackers were already retreating. But Lena saw something. A group splitting off, carrying something heavy. "Not done," she said. She grabbed a rifle and turned to the others. "With me?" They followed. The tracks were clear even in the dark. Lena led them straight to the ridge, where the men were setting charges. "Now," she said. They moved fast, caught them off guard. The fight was quick, violent, but the explosives never went off. And when it was over, the attackers were gone. Back at the ranch, the fire burned low. Ethan lay inside, pale, barely conscious. Walter sat nearby, his face tight. "There's something you need to know," he said. He looked at Lena, then at Ethan. "Victor Cain didn't start this," now he continued. "He's been doing it for years." Ethan's eyes opened slightly. Walter swallowed. "He poisoned the water." Silence. Ethan's breath hitched. "What?" Walter nodded slowly. "Back then, when people got sick, when your family..." Ethan stared at him. "No." Walter didn't look away. It wasn't a disease. The world seemed to collapse inward. Ethan sat up suddenly, ignoring the pain. "No," he repeated. "That's not, but it was." The memory flooded back. The sickness, the confusion, the way it had spread, and now a reason. Ethan's hands trembled. All this time, Lena watched him carefully. The ground beneath him had been pulled away, and there was nothing left to stand on. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked up at her, and she saw it. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper. Something broken. That was when Lena understood. He couldn't lead, not now. So she did. Without announcing it, without asking. She simply stepped forward, and the others followed. Victor Cain did not stay gone for long. 3 days after the fire riders appeared on the far ridge, not 2, not 5, but nearly a dozen. They moved in a straight line across the pale morning light, their horses steady, their rifles visible against their saddles. These were not drunken ranch hands or desperate thieves. These men rode with discipline. They watched the valley as soldiers watched a battlefield. Walter Briggs saw them first. "Ethan," he called quietly, "you better come look at this." Ethan stepped onto the porch, one arm still stiff from the gunshot wound. Lena came out behind him. The moment she saw the riders, her face changed. Victor was at the front. He no longer wore the polite smile of a businessman. There were no papers in his hand this time, no offer, no friendly words. Behind him, men carried rifles, coils of rope, and boxes that Lena knew were too heavy to be simple supplies. "Dynamite," she said. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's done pretending. By dusk, Victor's men had made camp at the edge of the valley. Fires burned in a controlled line. Guards moved in pairs. No one rode close enough to talk. No one needed to. The message was clear. Hale Ranch would be taken. That night, the ranch felt smaller than ever. Every sound seemed too loud. The creak of boards, the restless horses, Ethan's uneven breathing. But Lena did not panic. She stood outside in the cold, watching the enemy campfires blink like red eyes in the dark. This time, she said, "They want us to see them coming." Before Ethan could answer, another sound rose from the eastern trail. Hooves. Many of them. Walter lifted his rifle, but Lena raised her hand. Out of the trees came a line of native warriors. Their horses moved silently over the frozen ground, their faces unreadable beneath the fading light. At the front rode Thomas Crow. Lena did not move. For a long moment, father and daughter looked at each other across the yard of Hale Ranch. The last time she had seen him, he had left her at this gate and ridden away without looking back. Now he had returned, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Ethan stepped forward, guarded. "You here to help?" Thomas did not answer him. His gaze moved from Ethan to the ranch, then toward Victor's campfires in the distance. "I am here to stop a war," Thomas said. Lena felt something cold settle inside her. Not to save her, not to defend the ranch, to stop a war. The next morning, Thomas rode out before sunrise, not toward Lena, not toward Ethan, but toward Victor Cain. Lena watched from behind the barn as her father crossed the open field. Victor came to meet him halfway, flanked by two armed men. They spoke quietly at first, too far for the words to carry, but Lena could read enough in their posture. Victor stood relaxed. Thomas stood rigid. Then Victor pointed toward the valley, toward the river, toward the ranch. Lena's fingers tightened around the fence rail. Noah Black Elk appeared beside her. "He's bargaining." With Victor, Noah did not answer. He didn't have to. When Thomas returned, Lena met him before he could reach the others. "What did he offer you?" she asked. Thomas's eyes hardened. "You are still a child." "No," Lena said. "I stopped being that when you left me here." The word struck him, but he did not show it. "Victor wants control of the valley," Thomas said. "If we allow him passage and give up our claim to the lower land, he will leave the tribe alone." Ethan took a step forward. "You're giving him the valley. I am keeping my people alive," Thomas snapped. "And what about the people here?" Lena asked. Thomas looked at her, then truly looked at her. "You think this ranch can stand against hired rifles? You think a handful of cowboys and restless warriors can stop what is coming?" Lena's voice stayed quiet. "I think running will not save us." Thomas shook his head. "You sound like Elowen." At the old woman's name, Lena's eyes sharpened. "She taught me to listen," Lena said. "You taught me what it feels like to be thrown away." A silence fell between them. Thomas looked toward Victor's camp. "If we fight, people die. If we give him this valley," Lena replied, "more will die later." He did not answer. And in that silence, Lena understood. Her father had not changed. He still believed survival meant giving up whatever could not be defended easily. He still believed strength meant numbers, weapons, warriors. And he still did not understand her. By midday, Hale Ranch was divided. Some of Thomas's warriors prepared to ride back with him. A few ranch hands whispered that maybe surrender was the only way. Ethan paled from blood loss, but standing said nothing for a long while. Then Lena stepped into the center of the yard. "No one has to stay," she said. "But if Victor takes this valley, he will not stop here. He will take the water, the horses, the land under our feet. He will turn every home into something he can sell." Walter leaned on his rifle. "Girl's right." Noah stepped beside her. "I stay." One by one, others moved forward. Not all of them, but enough. Thomas watched stunned as warriors from his own people chose Lena over his command. Lena did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply turned to the land. "We use the valley," she said. "Not against itself, with it." That afternoon, she organized the defense. Cowboys took positions along the lower fence and barn roof. Noah's warriors moved through the trees and rock lines where horses could pass, but wagons could not. Walter and 2 ranch hands strung tin cups, wire, and broken tools across the northern approach so any movement would rattle before the attackers reached the yard. Lena marked soft ground near the creek where horses would sink if forced too fast. She showed the men where the ridge narrowed, where sound carried, where shadows would hide movement. Ethan watched her from the porch. "You've been planning this," he said. Lena looked at the valley. "No, I've been listening." Night came without moonlight. The attack began with silence. Then the warning wire rattled. Lena raised one hand. No one fired. Again the rattle, sharper this time. Then came the first gunshot from Victor's side. The valley exploded. Rifle fire cracked across the dark. Bullets tore splinters from fence posts. Horses screamed inside the corral. Victor's men pushed forward in 3 groups, exactly as Lena had expected. One toward the barn, one toward the cabin, one circling wide toward the creek. "Creek line," Lena called. Noah vanished into the shadows with 3 warriors. The mercenaries at the creek moved fast, confident in the dark, until their horses hit the soft bank. One stumbled. Another reared. In that moment of confusion, Noah's group struck from the trees, not to kill blindly, but to scatter them, force them back into the open. On the barn roof, Walter fired once, then shifted position. "Don't stay where they last saw you," Lena shouted. The cowboys listened. What had begun as chaos started to become rhythm. Victor's men advanced, but every path they chose had already been read. Every shortcut became a trap. Every shadow held someone waiting. Victor shouted from the ridge, furious, "Push through, it's one ranch." But it was no longer just one ranch. It was a valley fighting back. Ethan, against Lena's orders, stepped from the porch with his rifle in one hand. "You should be inside," she said. "So should you," he replied. A bullet struck the post beside him. He flinched, but stayed upright. Lena saw movement near the western fence, 3 men slipping past the main fight with a box between them. "Dynamite," she said. She didn't wait. She ran. Noah and Ethan followed. The 3 men reached the rebuilt stable and set the box down near the support beams. One struck a match. Lena came out of the dark like a storm. She slammed into him before the flame touched the fuse. Ethan fired over her shoulder, forcing the second man back. Noah took down the third with the butt of his rifle. The match died in the snow. Victor saw it happen. For the first time, his confidence cracked. He tried to retreat toward his horse, but Walter and 2 ranch hands cut him off from the barn side. Noah blocked the trees. Ethan raised his rifle from the yard, and Lena stood directly in front of him. Victor stared at her, breathing hard. You? Lena said nothing. You ruined everything, he spat. No, she said. I saw what you were trying to hide. Victor drew his pistol. Ethan fired first. The bullet struck Victor's hand, sending the weapon into the dirt. Noah tackled him before he could reach for it again. Within seconds, Victor Cain was on his knees, wrists bound behind his back. The gunfire faded. Men dropped their weapons. Others fled into the trees. The valley, still smoking and scarred, remained standing. Victor lifted his head and began to laugh. Walter frowned. What's funny? Victor looked at all of them, cowboys, warriors, Lena, Ethan, Thomas, standing frozen near the edge of the yard. You still don't know, do you? No one spoke. Victor smiled through blood on his lip. This was never about cattle, never about one broken-down ranch. His eyes moved to the hills. There's silver under this valley, more than any of you fools can imagine. A murmur passed through the crowd. Ethan stared at him. Silver. Victor nodded slowly. A vein running deep under the western pasture and straight beneath this land. Enough to build a town, enough to make kings out of men who know what to do with it. Then his smile widened, and he knew. Lena turned. Thomas Crow did not move. Victor laughed again. Ask your father. The silence that followed was worse than gunfire. Lena looked at Thomas. Is it true Thomas's face had gone gray? Is it true, she asked again. He lowered his eyes. Yes. The word struck harder than any blow. Thomas spoke slowly, as if each sentence cost him something. Years ago, Elowen saw signs in the stone near the western creek. I knew men like Victor would come if word spread. So you hid it, Lena said. I tried to avoid bloodshed. No, she said, voice trembling now. You ran from it. Thomas flinched. You gave up the land, Lena continued. You gave up me. He had no answer. For the first time in his life, Thomas Crow looked small. He looked past Lena at the ranch hands standing behind her, at Noah and the warriors who had chosen her at Ethan Hale, wounded but alive because of her at the valley Victor had failed to take. And finally, he saw it. The daughter he had called weak had done what he never could. She had stood. Thomas's voice broke. I thought I was leaving behind a burden, he said. Lena's eyes filled, but she did not look away. Thomas looked over the valley, then back at her. But I left behind the one person strong enough to save us all. Word spread faster than the wind ever could. Within weeks of Victor Cain's capture, the story of the hidden silver beneath the valley reached towns far beyond Copper Ridge. By the time the first wagons arrived, the quiet land around Hale Ranch no longer belonged only to those who lived there. It had become something people wanted. They came in groups, men in pressed coats and polished boots, surveyors with measuring tools, representatives from mining companies and railroad firms. They carried maps rolled in leather tube stacks of contracts and the kind of confidence that only came from knowing there was money to be made. Ethan stood beside the fence as the first group approached. You folks lost, he asked. One of the men smiled. Quite the opposite, Mr. Hale. We found exactly what we're looking for. They didn't waste time. We're prepared to offer you and your community a generous deal. Another said, spreading a map across the back of a wagon. Full mining rights in exchange for payment up front and ongoing. You'd be looking at more money than most people see in a lifetime. Walter let out a low whistle. That's so. The man nodded. And that's just the beginning. We build a rail line through here, establish a proper town jobs trade growth. This valley could become something important. More wagons followed in the days after. More offers, more promises. Some of the ranch hands listened carefully. A few of the warriors exchanged uncertain looks. Even those who had stood firm in battle felt the pull of what was being offered. Money, security, a future that didn't depend on surviving winter after winter. The valley shifted again, but this time the tension wasn't from outside. It was within. Lena said nothing at first. While others argued and negotiated, she walked. She moved along the river, watching the water slide over stone. She crossed the pastures where the horses grazed their hooves steady against the earth. She climbed the low ridge where the wind carried the scent of pine and distant snow. She listened. The land hadn't changed, but everything around it had. She returned to the camp of the surveyors one afternoon and asked questions not about money, not about contracts, but about the work. "How deep will you dig?" she asked. The foreman shrugged. "Deep enough to reach the vein. A few 100 feet, maybe more. And the rock blasted, and the water a pause." "It'll be redirected," he said carefully. "Some waste is inevitable, but we manage it." Lena nodded slowly. "And the animals?" The man didn't answer immediately this time. "They'll move?" That night, she sat alone by the creek. The same creek Victor had poisoned years ago. The same water that had taken Ethan's family. The surface looked calm. But she knew now how easily it could be changed. Alawan's voice returned to her not as memory, but as something deeper. Some things we take from the earth never come back. The next morning, Lena called everyone to the ranch. Cowboys, warriors, families, even the investors who lingered at the edge of the gathering. She stood in the center quiet until the voices faded. "If we take the silver," she began, "this valley will not survive." A murmur moved through the crowd. One of the investors stepped forward. "With respect, that's not accurate. We've built operations like this all across the territory." "You break the ground," Lena continued, not raising her voice. "You blast the rock. You dig until the earth cannot hold itself together." She looked toward the river. The water changes. It carries what should not be there. The animals leave because they cannot live in what we leave behind. Another voice spoke up from the crowd. "But we'd be rich." Lena nodded. "For a time." She turned back to them, and when the silver is gone, no one answered. "You will not own this valley anymore," she said. "You will work it. You will depend on it. And when it gives you nothing, you will leave it behind." Silence settled heavily over the group. Walter stepped forward slowly. "I didn't come here for silver," he said. "I came here to live." Ethan moved beside him. "Same," one of the younger ranch hands hesitated. "But what if this is our chance?" Lena met his gaze. "Then ask yourself what you're trading for it." The arguments lasted for hours. Some wanted to sell, some refused. Voices rose, fell, clashed. Old fears and new hopes collided in the open air. But slowly, quietly, the balance began to shift. Not because Lena forced it, because she had already shown them what the valley meant. By sunset, the decision was made. Ethan stepped forward. "This land isn't for sale." The investors stared at him in disbelief. "You're walking away from a fortune," one said. Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. But we're keeping our home." Within days, the wagons left. The maps were rolled up. The contracts packed away. The promises disappeared down the same road they had arrived on. The valley grew quiet again, but not the same quiet as before. This one felt chosen. Thomas Crow remained. He waited until the others had gone, until the valley no longer echoed with arguments and strangers. Then he found Lena. She stood near the edge of the pasture, watching the horses move against the wind. "I was wrong," he said. Lena didn't turn. "I know," she replied. Thomas took a step closer. "I should not have left you." "No," Lena said. "You shouldn't have." He swallowed. "I thought I was protecting the tribe." "You were protecting yourself," she said. The words landed harder than any accusation. Thomas lowered his gaze. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," Lena said quietly. That made him look up. "Because you're not getting it," she continued. "Not now." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand." Lena finally turned to face him. "I survived without you," she said. "I built something without you. That doesn't disappear because you regret what you did." Thomas's voice softened. "What do I do now?" Lena held his gaze. "You live with it." There was no anger in her voice, only truth. And that was harder to face than anything else. In the weeks that followed, the valley began to change, not because of silver, but because of people. The ranch expanded. New structures rose slowly, built by hands that now worked together instead of against each other. Lakota families returned to the land, setting up lodges along the eastern hills. Cowboys repaired fences and shared grazing space. What had once been separate worlds began to overlap. Not perfectly, but honestly. Lena moved through it all without claiming leadership, yet everyone looked to her when decisions needed to be made. One morning, she cleared out an old storage building near the barn. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. "Making something new," she replied. By the end of the week, children filled the space. Some sat cross-legged on the floor. Others leaned against the walls. They came from both sides, from the ranch, from the tribe, from families that had never stood in the same room before. Lena picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a word on a rough board. "These are letters," she said. "They tell stories." The children watched closely. Then she stepped outside and pointed to the ground. "And these," she added, "are tracks. They tell stories too." A small boy raised his hand. "Which one is more important?" Lena smiled faintly. "That depends on where you're going." Ethan stood in the doorway watching. He was healing. Slowly, but steadily. The weight he carried had not disappeared, but it had changed. It no longer pulled him under. It moved with him. "You're building something here," he said later. Lena looked out across the valley. "No," she said. "We are." More people came. Not for silver, for something else. Families who had lost land. Workers who had grown tired of chasing promises. People who wanted a place that didn't take everything from them in return. They built small homes along the river, planted crops in the lower fields, helped care for the growing herd of horses that now moved freely across the open land. The valley became a community, not rich, but strong. Thomas left quietly. He did not ask Lena to return. He did not try to claim authority. He stood at the edge of the valley one last time, looking back at what he had nearly lost and what he no longer had the right to control. Then he turned and rode away. This time, Lena did not watch him go. She had already chosen where she belonged. 5 years passed, and Hale Valley became the kind of place people spoke about before they ever saw it. Homes rose along the river, where there had once been only grass and silence. Smoke curled from stone chimneys in the early morning. Children ran between cabins, barns, and lodges, with the easy confidence of those who had never known the valley as a battlefield. The horse herd had grown beyond anything Ethan Hale had once imagined, spreading across the open pastures like a living tide. Their hooves rolled through the valley at sunrise, and the sound became part of the place itself. Lena Crow was no longer the abandoned girl at the gate. She had no official title, no badge, no crown, no written authority. Yet when disputes rose, people looked for her. When families argued over water paths or grazing lines, they waited for her voice. When storms gathered over the western ridge, they watched to see whether Lena stepped outside and listened. She taught children to read words from a board and tracks from the mud. She showed them how the tilt of grass could reveal the passage of deer, how the silence of birds could warn of danger, how water never lied if someone took the time to understand it. Ethan stayed close, never trying to stand in front of her. He had become something steadier than a leader. He was the man who repaired the doors before winter, who settled frightened horses, who sat quietly beside Lena when decisions weighed too heavily on her shoulders. "You built this place," he told her one evening. Lena looked across the valley. "No. I helped it remember what it could be." For a while, that seemed enough. But peace, like land, had to be tended. The first cracks came quietly. New families arrived from distant towns. Some had not seen the burned stable. Some had not stood against Victor Cain. Some had never watched men point rifles at the homes they loved. To them, the silver beneath the valley was not a wound or a warning. It was an opportunity. At first, they spoke in whispers. "We could build more. We could trade with Cheyenne. We're sitting on wealth and pretending dirt is enough." Then the whispers became conversations at supper tables, then arguments outside the storehouse. "We are not poor because we have nothing," one younger settler said one night. "We are poor because we refuse to use what we have." Lena heard the words from across the room, but she did not answer. Ethan noticed. "You going to say something?" "Not yet," she said. A week later, the men in pressed coats returned. This time they did not bring gunmen. They brought lawyers. They arrived with stamped documents, legal maps, surveys, territorial claims, and language so polished it cut more deeply than any blade. The leader of the group, a thin man named Mr. Harrow, stood before the gathered valley and unrolled a map across a table. According to territorial records, he said this valley was never legally transferred into private ownership by recognized authority. Walter Briggs, older and slower now, but still sharp-eyed, spat into the dirt. Recognized by who? Harrow smiled without warmth. By the law. Ethan's face darkened. "People live here." "Yes," Harrow said. "Improperly." A cold silence followed. The threat was different this time. No smoke, no gunfire, no riders in the night, just paper seal signatures and men who knew how to make theft look respectable. "We are prepared to offer a cooperative arrangement," Harrow continued. "Controlled mining, employment guarantees, housing improvements, a legal township charter." Some people shifted. The words sounded safe, organized, modern. A young woman stepped forward from the company side. Lena recognized her before she spoke. Mara Vale? Once Mara had been a child in Lena's classroom. She had learned letters with chalk dust on her fingers and followed Lena through the grass, asking questions about every track in the mud. Now she wore a fitted coat, her hair pinned neatly beneath a dark hat, a leather case under one arm. "Hello, Lena," Mara said. The room stilled. Lena looked at her carefully. "Mara." Ethan murmured. "You know her, I taught her," Lena said. Mara did not look ashamed. If anything, she looked determined. "I came because someone needed to speak to this valley without threatening it," Mara said. "And because someone needed to tell the truth." Walter frowned. "Company truth?" Mara turned to him. "No. The truth that survival is not enough forever." Her eyes returned to Lena. "You taught me to see the land," Mara said. "But you never taught me how to grow beyond it." The words struck harder than Lena expected. For the first time in many years, she had no immediate answer. Mara continued, voice steady. You saved this valley. No one denies that. But now people are growing up here. They want trade schools, medicine roads. They want futures larger than fences and horses. And you think silver gives them that? Lena asked. I think fear has kept them from asking. That night, Hale Valley divided. Not with hatred. That would have been easier. It divided with doubt. Some families believed Mara. They did not want to destroy the valley, but they wanted to improve it. Others stood with Lena, refusing to let mining touch the land. For days, the community argued. Meals went cold. Old friends avoided each other. A few families packed wagons, saying they would leave if the valley chose to remain frozen in the past. Lena could have commanded. People would have listened. But she knew that would only make obedience, not belief. So she changed the fight. She asked Harrow and Mara to allow one small test site on rocky ground near the western claim, far from the homes, but close enough to the water table to show the truth. Mara agreed. If you are right, Mara said, people should see it. And if you are wrong, Lena asked. Mara held her gaze. Then you should see that too. For 3 days, the company men dug and blasted a shallow test pit. The sound rolled through the valley like old thunder. Horses refused to graze near the western field. Birds left the cottonwoods. Dust settled over the grass. At first, some people said it was nothing. Then the creek changed. Not everywhere. Just a small branch that ran below the test site. The water turned cloudy, then faintly yellow-brown. Dead insects gathered along the edge. The calf refused to drink. Lena said nothing. She simply brought the people there. One by one, they saw it. Mara stood at the bank, her face pale. Harrow tried to explain. Temporary disruption, easily managed. But no one listened. A boy from Lena's school knelt beside the water. It smells wrong. That was enough. The vote came the next morning. No mining, no legal partnership, no company control. Harrow left angry, promising court challenges and future claims. Mara stayed behind after the wagons departed. I thought I was helping, she said. Lena stood beside her near the damaged creek. You were trying to. Mara looked at her. I still believe the valley has to grow. It does, Lena said, but not by poisoning itself. Mara nodded, though sadness remained in her eyes. I'm leaving, she said. I know. I may come back one day with another answer. Lena almost smiled. Then bring one that listens. Mara mounted her horse and rode out before sunset. The company was gone, but Lena understood something that had not been clear before. Keeping a world was harder than building one, and the valley would be tested again. 10 more years passed. Time did what no enemy had ever managed. It slowed Lena Crow. Her steps became more careful. Her hair carried silver now, not the kind men had once tried to tear from the earth, but the kind earned by years of wind worry and survival. She still walked the valley, but not as far. She still listened, but sometimes the younger ones heard things before she did. Ethan aged beside her. His shoulders bent slightly, but his presence remained steady. He no longer needed to say much. People found comfort simply knowing he was there. Hale Valley had become more than a settlement. People from other territories came to study it. They came to see how native families and ranching families shared water, how children learned both books and ground signs, how a place once nearly destroyed by greed had survived without surrendering itself. The children Lena had taught were grown now. Some managed herds, Some settled disputes. Some taught in the schoolhouse. Some rode patrol along the ridges. They no longer came to Lena for every answer. At first, that gave her peace. Then came the drought. It began with a dry spring, then a hotter summer, then a fall with no real rain. The river thinned. The grass yellowed. The horses wandered farther each day, searching for grazing ground that no longer gave enough. Foals grew weak. Wells dropped lower. Dust rose where water had once held the soil together. People came to Lena, as they always had. What do we do? She stood by the creek, watching the narrow water struggle over exposed stones. Years ago, she would have known what to say. Move the herd here. Dig there. Wait for this wind. Trust that sign. But the signs had changed. The old knowledge was not useless. It simply was not enough. For the first time, Lena looked at the faces waiting for her and felt the weight of truth. I don't know, she said. The words frightened them more than the drought. That evening, Lena sat alone outside the schoolhouse. Ethan found her there. They expected an answer, she said. They expected you? Ethan replied. That may be the problem. Before he could answer, a rider appeared on the eastern road. Mara Vale had returned, older now, wiser in the face, dust covered from travel. Behind her rode two young surveyors, not company men, but former students from the valley who had gone east to study water systems and soil. Lena stood slowly. Mara dismounted. I didn't come with miners, she said. Lena looked past her at the tools strapped to the horses. Then, what did you bring? Maps? New ones? Rain records? Underground flow charts? Mara paused. And people who still remember what you taught them. The next morning, the younger generation gathered. They did not ask Lena to lead. They asked her to watch. Noah's son studied old creek beds. Mara traced hidden water lines from distant rock formations. Two former students rode west and found grass beyond the ridge, where the herd could be moved temporarily. Others built shaded troughs, redirected what little water remained, and divided the horses into smaller groups so the land could breathe. Lena saw pieces of herself in all of them, but also things she had never known. One young man knelt beside the dry creek and pressed his hand to the earth just as she once had. Then he stood and said, the water didn't vanish. It moved deeper. A girl who had learned letters in Lena's schoolhouse unfolded a map and said, we can reach it without breaking the valley. Lena watched them work. No one waited for her permission. No one needed to. Days became weeks. Some horses were lost, and the grief of that settled over the valley. But most survived. The herd moved. New shallow wells were dug carefully away from the fragile creek. Water was rationed, crops were changed. Families adjusted not because Lena commanded them, but because the valley had learned how to answer together. One evening, as the first thin rain finally touched the dust, Lena stood on the same ridge where she had once watched the valley after refusing the silver. Below, people moved with purpose. Without her, Ethan came to stand beside her. For a long time, neither spoke. Then he asked softly, do they still need you? Lena watched Mara laughing with one of the young riders as they tried to cover a water barrel before the rain passed. She watched children carry buckets. She watched the horses lift their heads to the scent of wet earth. A smile touched her face. No, she said. Ethan looked at her. Lena's eyes shone, but not with sadness. And that means I did it right. The rain fell lightly over Hale Valley. Not enough to end every hardship. Not enough to promise peace forever. But enough. Enough for the grass to remember green. Enough for the river to keep moving. Enough for Lena to understand that she had never been the valley's true legacy. The people were. The children who listened. The students who questioned. The ones who stayed left returned, argued learned, and carried the work beyond her hands. Years before, they had called her stupid because they could not understand the way she saw the world. Now the world she helped build could see for itself. For me, this story isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about redefining what strength actually means. I see Lena not as someone who rises because others doubted her, but as someone who never tried to fit into their definition in the first place. What stays with me is the idea that being misunderstood can be a form of protection, not a weakness, because it forces you to build your identity from within, not from approval. In the end, I don't think Lena won by changing the valley. I think she won the moment she stopped needing anyone to understand her to know her worth. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed the story and want to see more powerful content like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss what comes next.